All right. My name is Pedro Moreira da Silva, and I'm a staff product designer in the Create code review area of GitLab. And today I'm going to talk to you about sustainable cross-stage collaboration. And if you just saw Mike's presentation, I think this is going to stay in the, in the balance between theory and practice and then more the philosophical level. But I'll try to keep it short so that we can have more time for discussion. So this is a very common expression that comes up should come up every day at GitLab, right? So boring solutions, we see something in the product that someone already implemented. We don't know how long ago, but someone did, maybe yesterday, maybe 4 years ago. And we say, I know, let's just reuse that. Like some team implemented that, so we're good. We can buy ourselves some time, and probably users are already accustomed to that. So let's reuse that as a pattern, right? But the problem is, especially for most designers and UXers that are recent to the company, to the product, is that they lack knowledge, right? And so they do what, for example, Mike in the previous presentation showed, is that he had to go down the rabbit hole to understand it. So we go through all of the discussions, all of the issues, merge requests, documentation that we can find to look for a rationale and for decisions, just to make sure we're in the right location. And like a child, we end up doing that many times just to make sure that we got it right. And it seems like every designer and every technical writer and every UX researcher is being born again, trying to learn all of these things over and over again because they're not documented and there's no clear rationale for them. So another problem then happens when teams try to reuse what's there today is that they create a picture based on assumptions. So it's a bit of like the broken telephone game where we take all of the knowledge and the discussions and decisions and rationale that we could find. We try to map all of that in our head. And yeah, maybe that's the intention. Maybe this is the purpose of this pattern. Maybe this is how it should be used. Maybe this is how we should implement it technically. So we put all of those pieces together based on assumptions. And the final thing about all of this is that this is just duplicate work. As I said, we keep doing this over and over again. And in the beginning, I mentioned people that are here at GitLab for a short time, but this happens many times. I mean, at least for me, it happens many times already in my tenure at GitLab. And so this comic strip describes that very well. We have an employee here saying, hey, I started a task force to eliminate redundancies in our internal processes. And his colleague says, really, I'm doing the same thing. So, okay, so redundancies still exist. And I think this is a massive problem to us. If you look at that very technical and validated equation at the bottom, time spent times the number of people that do this, times the frequency that they do it, is the amount of productivity loss that we have. So it's that cost of productivity. And I would even argue that there's the cost of opportunity, because we're not only duplicating the work, the time that we're spending duplicating the work and doing all of this guesswork is actually taking time away from better opportunities. So that's, I think, even the worst cost. So this has compounding negative effects that I think we're all more or less aware of, that it creates more technical and UX debt. It creates more collaboration costs because we have to keep repeating things and asking people where this came from if we're doing the right decision. Less coherent and consistent user and developer experiences. So not only what is in the user interface and the user-facing experience, but also the people that are developing. And as we know, GitLab has had a massive growth over the last years. And so the people that are coming in are inheriting a lot of the decisions and are just, assuming from what's already there. So maybe it's a good decision, maybe not. Less velocity, of course. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is less value to everyone, less revenue, right? So here's an example. This is a screenshot from the async critique that we did in Figma for the merge requests. And this is specifically looking at all of the merge request widgets. And you can see the amount of comments here. I think most of you here on this call are already familiar with this. But just to show you the scale of possibly all of the inconsistencies that exists, right? Not all of these comments and all of these screenshots show inconsistencies, but I would argue that the majority are inconsistencies or even implementations that follow a seemingly a pattern that we think exists, but at the end of the day, that pattern is not the best solution for the problem at hand. So this is basically a result of contributions over the years from different parties with no guidance and vision. So the million, or should I say billion-dollar question, right? Because that's what we want, and we're aiming for $1 billion business is how can everyone contribute sustainably? Everyone can contribute is what we are aiming for, right? So how can we do that? I think of two things. So first one, frameworks to guide contributions. And second, very tightly related to the first one, is clear collaboration responsibilities. So what does that mean in practice? So the first thing, frameworks to guide contributions. There's a link at the top to, I think, a still open merge request that I'm hoping to have merged this week that is focused just on the collaboration of teams that are contributing to the merge request experience. So these frameworks that are in that merge request, I'm calling them contribution frameworks. The lack of a better term, I'm not very fond of the term. If you have suggestions, I'm open to that. But basically, there are just guidelines on how to plan, design, and build solutions that are coherent and consistent with the current experience from both a user and, again, technical perspective. So not only what we think as design, but design in a broader sense, also the technical side of how it's designed. And we actually have something very similar in our handbook today in the product designer workflow. It's at the very bottom, and maybe not a lot of people remember this or have gone that far down to this section, but we have this section on follow-up after design is complete. And today it's very focused on changes that affect pajamas and things that we think, hey, this is a UI component, a UI pattern, or something like that. And we have a lot of steps here to update the design system. But what I'm arguing here is for something that is not just focused on UI patterns, but it's larger than that, right? And I'll give some examples at the end. And the next part is clear collaboration responsibilities, because we can say, hey, okay, that's a great idea. Let's build these frameworks. Let's document these guidelines from a design and development perspective. But who does that, right? And we need to have clear responsibilities and accountability by the people that need to do these things. So one of the things that I, it was a suggestion that Kai, my product manager, made about perhaps using the RACI models, which is basically a model that very simple. You just say who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consultant, and who's informed at different steps. And here what I did was map the phases on the left side of the table. We have a column for the product development flow phases, design, solution, validation, plan, and so on, and mapping those to, in this case, your group and the code review group and how we would collaborate. And so who is responsible, who's accountable, who should be informed, who should be consulted at each step of the way. And for me, the most important one is at the bottom, and it's bolded, which is to contribute to an established contribution framework. So you can look at a merge request, it's larger than this, and it has much more rationale, or you're free to ask questions at the end of this presentation about it. But basically what I really want is for groups, regardless of who's working on something, to feel the responsibility of We went through this process, we made these decisions, and this is why, and let's document this as fast as possible so that other groups can learn from that. And so, yeah, in this case, compounding positive effects. Everyone has time to dance in the office and set up some weird lights. And this is the opposite of what I showed before. So less technical debt and UX depth, less collaboration costs, more coherent and consistent user and developer experiences, more velocity, more value, more revenue. But to do this, we need one platform mindset. So we need to, we're always, I think, we try to do it, but in a way we keep ourselves confined to our stage groups, right? So I'm a product designer in Create Code Review, but maybe I should be thinking I'm a product designer of one DevOps platform, right? And the same thing for technical writers. Your technical writers are not just technical writers for the stage group. Most of the things that they're doing for their stage group will be helpful and will be used and will be leveraged years from now or tomorrow by other people. So they should be thinking that everything has this butterfly effect. And also UX researchers. And UX researchers, and I also think that product designers, when we're doing research, this is actually the moment where we notice that we have one platform because the users only see one platform, and the issues that come up because users are using one platform. They're not using a stage group specifically. I mean, they can, but that experience is seamless for them. And that's, if you look on the right side of this slide here, that's exactly what we have on our homepage. Single source of truth, manage projects, not tools. And today, more often than not, I think we're always working as if we're separate tools. And even that's because, even though that's not what we want and that's our intention, that's what we ended up doing. And with GitLab, you get an open DevOps platform delivered as a single application. One interface, one conversation thread, one data store, zero headaches. But again, this is all amazing. I don't think just thinking about this is enough. We need to create space for this mindset. We need to do that intentionally, and it will take away focus from other things. So here are some examples on the right side, but basically what do I mean by this space is giving UXers, regardless if they're technical writers, UX researchers, product designers, time to identify opportunities for cross-stage collaboration and time to plan and create contribution frameworks. And the first example is, I think this presentation that you're seeing today and that I'm presenting to you is one of many things that have resulted from the opportunity that we had for Sanjung to join us in code review. And so I've had time, and this might sound very simple, but I had time to stop and think, when was the last time that you stopped to reflect and think about something in a strategic way? And I mean, as like Mike was saying in the presentation before, going down through all of those whys, but not just for one feature, for everything, or even for how we work, right? The other example is one thing that we're starting to do right now in Q2 is making the case for Amy, Ian, and Jeremy to create a framework for the merge request widgets where they will act as true one platform UXers, and they will need to collaborate with others. But for example, Jeremy is from the UX Foundation team, and he already has, I believe, this one platform mentality, but it would be much more applicable compared to what he's doing more in the design system. And Ian is working in the package group, and package doesn't have any merge request widget, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think that group has any widgets there. So he will be completely out of his natural environment to work across stages as a one platform UX. And Amy will, of course, collaborate with other technical writers. And finally, one example that we've heard very often recently is the navigation and settings redesign that Michael has been spearheading and doing an amazing job. But we need to keep that up because this, as we all know, has compounding positive effects. And even for Ian, taking time away from package doesn't mean that package will not reap the benefits. It will. Every stage group will reap the benefits, even if we just say people are buying more licenses of GitLab because of plan, for example. But in the end, maybe they realize, hey, they have package, right? So package is, as a consequence, is getting more attention because of that. So here are some examples. I won't go through all of them. This is just to complete the picture. Some examples of opportunities for contribution frameworks. One that is very straightforward, discussion and activity, which includes threads, comments, and more. So many groups that could leverage from framework or for just documentation, development, and design documentation on how we can plan, build, and extend these things. So project management would benefit from that, product planning as well, code review, and others in the future that end up creating similar experiences. And there are other examples here: diff annotation, policies, navigation in settings again, configuration file, which was something that was featured recently in one of the last UX showcases, and surely many more. So to end this presentation, we need to the ultimate goal is to leverage the UXers' facilitation, critical thinking superpowers so that they can focus on more impactful problems, but we need to create space for that. And when we do that, and we have the ability to set these frameworks in place, that will provide immense leverage for UXers to focus on the right problems, because engineers, other teams, and the wider community will be much more autonomous to build the right thing and also build it right. And this is basically the summary of what I wanted to share with you today. And thank you for your time.